Order the Wednesday, February 8th, regular meeting of the Planning Commission. So would you call roll, please?
Vice Chair Suma,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Here.
Commissioner Heckman,
Present.
Commissioner Rectal.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And Ms. French, would you like to do the Zoom instructions and also the adoption of the resolution, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Amy French, Chief Planning Official. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting will be held with the option to attend by teleconference or in person. Members of the public may provide live public comment by submitting a speaker card prior to the start of public comment on that item. Speakers may address items that are not on the agenda during the oral communications portion of the meeting. Spoken comments via a computer or smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom app. To address the commission, go to zoom.us/join, meeting ID 916-4155-9499. When you wish to speak, please click on Raise Hand. To offer comments using a regular phone, call 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 916-4155-9499. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, hit *9 on your phone so that we know you wish to speak. And our next item is the adoption of resolution authorizing use of teleconferencing for Planning and Transportation Commission meetings during COVID-19 state of emergency. I believe we're in our last month of an emergency. So, shall we? Moved by Commissioner Heckman, second.
Second. Thank you.
Chang. And the vote?
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Vice Chair Suma,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and so we'll move on to the public comment period. And do we have any, I don't see anyone in the chambers, but do we have anyone online who wishes to speak to an item not on our agenda?
No, there's no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, no raised hands. We'll move on to any agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
Yes, so this evening, we will have the need to vote and second and vote and all that to continue item 4, 2147 Yale preliminary parcel map with exceptions to subdivide existing parcel into substandard lots. This was slated to go tonight as an action item. We will need to, due to the lateness of the continuation, we will need to continue that by vote to a date certain, February 22nd. With the assumption that everyone who is in the chambers tonight is able to come. I have one more member who has confirmed that she will be attending the 22nd. So we need to have.
So do I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Okay, so that's motion to move this item 4, 2147 Yale to a date certain, February 22nd.
I have a procedural question. So we're about to vote. But the reason we're needing to do it, in addition to missing 2 of our commissioners, is one of our commissioners has to recuse.
Yes.
Is the recusing commissioner, our chair, able to vote on the motion to continue? And if not, that leaves 3 of us. And then we don't have a quorum for the vote. So I would
Okay.
challenge Mr. Yang to tell us what happens then.
Is Mr. Yang in attendance? Well, okay, then why don't we hold that vote off until we're through the just for the voting public though, or the attending public, so they know not to stick around because that one will need to be continued.
Yeah, we will not be hearing it tonight,
Right.
We will not be hearing that tonight.
one way or another.
Yes,
Because of lack of quorum.
because of a lack of a quorum. Yes.
Okay, so we won't vote, but we have let the public that's listening know that we cannot hear this item tonight because we don't have a quorum.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So
And Ms. French, just so that the public listening and interested, how will they confirm later that this is on the 22nd? I think they'll go to the website when our next agenda is posted, and we'll almost certainly see it there.
That will be one way to do it, because, yeah, if we do continue it to a date certain, we would not re-advertise in the newspaper, thereby saving the city some of that cost.
Should we ask Mr. Yang? He's here now.
Oh.
So maybe he could opine on that.
We're not even going to let you get warmed up. Yang.
I'm sorry, I was having some technical issues connecting, but I'm sort of those out.
So I don't know if you heard, but the question was if I can vote, because I have to recuse myself on item number 4, if I can vote to continue it.
Yes, I think that's fine. Okay, it doesn't influence the decision on the item at all.
Okay,
Yay.
so
All right. So in that case, we already have a motion and a second.
we can call the vote.
Vice Chair Suma,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much. And now it is time for city official reports.
Yes, thank you. So tonight we have Sylvia, who is Starlack, who is subbing for Raphael, who's on a big project at the moment. So we'll start with the transportation items.
Great,
Sylvia.
thanks, Amy. Good evening, Commissioners. It's nice to see you in person. I haven't been here in a long time in person. I am here in person because Rafael Rios is working on a project right now. The first of my 3 updates is the Fabian Charleston intersection. The signals there are being switched over to the new signal poles as we speak, but the full project there is still not fully complete, but we're moving over to the new infrastructure. The second update I have is that the El Camino Charleston intersection is planned to switch over on February 16th at night. The third item is that our on-demand shuttle, known as Palo Alto Link, will start on March 7th. You might have seen the study session at council or on Monday about it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from my colleagues?
As I came home tonight, the Fabian intersection was blinking red. Was that related to that, do you know, or is that?
Yeah, the Fabian Charleston?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was working on stuff. It took
Okay.
longer than he expected, otherwise he would have been here.
Okay.
So I'm sure it probably had some issues while they were transitioning over, but yeah.
Okay. So that was just a work in progress. That's not going to be the new mode of transportation.
No, that will not be the new mode.
Okay. Because I lost about 5 minutes at that intersection.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Luckily, I had cushion time tonight.
Yeah.
Usually I don't. Another thing is the Wilkie Way Bike Bridge. Do you have any information about that? They're doing that study of the 2 surfaces. And I was curious about whether we've used those services and also what kind of feedback have been getting about the.
Sure, that's
survey.
a public works project. So I have been working with them on it. I know some about it. I don't know everything about it. Those are new surfaces that we've, to my knowledge, not used before. That's why we're testing them out. And the survey, so we have 2 surveys for them. We have a dry condition survey. So if you walk or ride your bike over the bridge in dry conditions, you can fill out that survey. And if you use the bridge in wet conditions, you use that survey. And the survey is going to be open for a long time because, we were not expecting as much rain as we had, so we thought we had to leave the window open very long. But we do want to capture a lot of people. So I think the surveys are going to be open for a few more months still.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? So for the, hello.
Hi.
For the Fabian Charleston intersection, you had said that it's moving to the new infrastructure, but the work isn't completed. So when is the work now slated to be completed? And what is it that needs to be, for the public who's listening, what is it exactly that needs to be done after today?
I don't have the answer to those questions, but I can have Raphael
Okay,
get you that information.
great.
Yeah,
And then when you said that for El Camino Charleston, moving to the new infrastructure, is that what enables timing of the lights, or what is this? Can you refresh my memory as to what the new infrastructure enables
So
us to do?
I think he's just moving to the new signal poles, and maybe there may also be a new signal controller, the boxes that are at the corners. So I don't have all of the answers,
Okay.
but when you upgrade to better equipment, you can do more things. Sometimes we have old equipment that keeps us from having more and different signal timing. So the new stuff gives us more capacity, more functionality.
Thanks.
Okay, Ms. French, do you have a report?
Yes, just briefly. So let's see. The next planning commission meeting we'll have on the 22nd will include the item we continued, or yes, we've continued that to that meeting. We'll also have a report and discussion on the modifications to the ADU ordinance, chapter 1809 of the municipal code. So those two items for the 22nd. And then as far as council representation, not looking at the agenda, but who is that? As yet, I am not aware of an item that has been to the planning commission that needs representation. However, interest may be in upcoming the 13th council meeting. Will have study sessions, economic development strategy update, and the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. So those are two study sessions of interest. That meeting starts at 5. And then also on that is the budget amendment and an ADU quarterly report to reveal how many units have been approved and constructed and all that for the quarter. So beyond that, I don't know that there's any other February council meeting that requires representation from the commission.
Okay,
representative.
thank you very much for that. So that leads us to our first action item, item number 3, which is election of chair and vice chair. And this is an election of an interim chair because we lost our chair, so we need to replace him. And we have another issue, which is not on the agenda tonight, and I'm not sure if we need a motion or just direction to staff, but that is that our bylaws need to be brought into agreement with the BCC handbook. So they have changed, the terms start on April 1st, basically now, and we elect on January 1st. So we'll have to think about changing our election time, but that is not agendized for this evening. So I don't know if you need a motion to do that or not.
No, so I believe that we can squeeze one more item on the 22nd, and that can be both, that could be the bylaws that would include as well the number of remote meetings, similar to what the council recently did, voting on, their maximum number of remote meetings.
Yeah.
We can also include when the elections take place.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we'll do first is the election of an interim chair. So I will take nominations. And
Before we start nominating, actually, I want to sort of point of order clarification. And it really has to do with the duration of the chair and vice chair we will nominate and choose tonight. When I read our bylaws, what it says is that the persons elected serve for a term of 1 year or until their successors are elected. So I think we actually have a choice tonight, and I would like to hear from Mr. Yang on this. I think we can elect interim chair and vice chair with the thought that we would have new elections after April 1st when there are one or more additional new commissioners appointed. But I also think it's within our discretion to elect a chair and vice chair tonight that that could serve until April 1st, roughly, of 2024. I don't think that that would conflict with the language of our bylaws because they would serve until their successors are elected in April of 2024. And I wanted to see if Mr. Yang would weigh in on that, whether we have that flexibility.
Yeah, so I think that is something that the commission could decide tonight. I actually think the first issue that the commission needs to resolve is whether to hold the full year elections today or to delay them to a later date, because that is what the bylaws call for. And although it's not aligned with the term of commissioners set in the BCC handbook, it doesn't conflict with that either. So the first question is, are the elections tonight going to be for a full year's term or a year plus term, or will that election be delayed to a later date? And then that will sort of set the stage for what is being voted on tonight.
Okay, so to follow up on that, because I think you and I are saying the same thing, just differently, in kind of a different order. If we decided in this initial decision to have the annual election at a later date, then that really really determines that the election that we need to have tonight, because we need to have a chair, that would be an interim position, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Alternatively, if you decide to have the kind of full year's term election tonight, then you could later amend the bylaws to say, okay, we're going to have our annual elections in April, and the officers that are currently serving will hold their offices until April 2024.
Okay, and do we even need to do that? Because I mean, the bylaws currently say a year or until their successors are elected. So that could take it there.
We don't, but the bylaws, I guess, currently say that we'll have the elections in the first meeting after January 1st, unless at that meeting the PTC chooses a different date. So,
right. So okay. So then we've agendized this. This bylaws issue will be agendized on February 22nd, so we can fix that then.
Yes.
All right. And so following Mr. Yang's lead, that we really need to decide whether we're going to, the elections we hold tonight are going to be for a year, or we want to defer the election of a year-long post until the future. I'll just weigh in that my preference would be, because I think we have to vote on this first before the nominations. My preference would be to go ahead and nominate and elect officers tonight for a full year, or until their successors are elected after that.
Okay. Commissioner Chang?
So I think that it's kind of a moot point to some extent. In other words, whether we decided there is going to be a subsequent discussion after tonight about when the next election is held. So whether we vote for an interim now or not, the decision is going to be readdressed next time. So I'm fine with what Commissioner Heckman is suggesting, because we could easily decide at our next meeting that we're switching the calendar to, say, end of April or whatever it is, in which case we could say that the current chair and vice chair will need to vacate at that point. Or we could say that, nope, we've decided we're not going to do it. They're going to keep their term until a year from April. So
Yeah, I see that logic in that. Did you?
I'm happy either way.
So I guess I just don't want to set up a situation where we're obligated to have another election in April because tonight we have nominated and elected people under an interim label.
I agree with Commissioner Heckman's logic there. That way, we're not forced to, agendize something.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion?
Well, so if I may, I guess I'll note that the default is that the election held today will be for a full year's term. So if there are no motions made and you just go straight to nominations, that will be for a full year's term, unless, as Commissioner Chang noted, at your next meeting or when you take up the bylaws, you decide to make a change.
Okay, well then, given that, I move that so we're taking nominations then. So I would just nominate our current vice chair, Doria Suma, to be the chair.
Is there a second?
Do we need a second?
I don't, Mr. Yang, I don't think we need a second, do we?
Yeah, there are no set procedures for this. So what we've done in the past is to have a nomination and a second, and then to confirm that the nominee accepts the nomination. That's not something that you have to follow. And
We have a nomination and a second, and I guess I'm up. And I would accept that nomination and be very happy to serve either as an interim or default for the full year, whatever my colleagues decide at the next meeting.
So can I speak to my nomination? All right. So I think Commissioner Suma, hopefully soon to be Chair Suma, so she's the most senior, most experienced commissioner right now. And we rely on her expertise all the time. She's also extremely dedicated. And I look forward to having her lead us forward.
Did you want to speak to your second?
That was wonderful.
So I'm going to support this nomination with my intent that I'm hoping and expecting that you'll serve in this role for the next year until what I suspect is going to be around April of 2024. I think it's your time. I think it's maybe even I'm glad that you've accepted the nomination, and I'm looking forward to your leadership. I do think that the special quality you bring to the commission is your sort of remarkable knowledge of the history of Palo Alto and so many of the issues that come to us. You have background that you provide that I didn't hear about. It's not in the staff report, and a lot of times it's because staff didn't even know about it because you've been civically active here for so long, and so I think it seems like a pretty strong indication that you're going to be our next chair, and I'm really happy about that.
Well, thank you all for your extremely kind words. And I guess we should just go ahead and vote then.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but we should open up the floor to public comment before
I
taking
forgot.
any votes.
Sorry about that. Are there any public speakers? There's none in chambers. I don't know if there are any out in Zoom land.
Yes, we have one raised hand. Winter, if you can unmute yourself.
Let's see that. Okay, well, let's go to the public then.
Hi, I'm really delighted about this. I mean, just what you commissioners have just said, remarkable knowledge, longest serving commissioner. Commissioner Suma will do a really good job as a chair of the PTC. You didn't use the term, but you stepped around it. Institutional memory. She has a couple decades of service to Palo Alto on different committees, subcommittees, being appointed here, being appointed there to this or that. I have watched her at your meetings. I've watched her in other meetings and boards and things that she's been appointed to. And I don't know anybody with more knowledge about planning, zoning, all of the little tiny bits, nooks and crannies. I'm going to say nooks and crannies of the municipal code and all that sorts of things that are pertinent to PTC and the sorts of things that you consider. And she's very articulate. She gets to the point. She doesn't take up useless amounts of time. She's always courteous to staff and to other commissioners, which I put great value on. So I'm delighted by this, and I appreciate all you other commissioners in having your faith in Ms. Suma. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say. Well done.
Thank you, Ms. Dellenbach. Do we have any other speakers?
No, that's it.
Then I think we can go to the vote then.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Definitely.
Commissioner Chang,
Absolutely.
Vice Chair Suma.
I guess.
Motion carries 4-0.
Awesome. So now we have to elect a vice chair. So,
I would like to nominate Commissioner Chang.
okay, do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, would you like to speak to your nomination?
We need an acceptance of the
Oh.
nomination first.
Would you accept?
I'm happy to help out our chair. So yes.
Excellent. And would you now like to speak?
Okay, I can speak. Yeah, I have found Commissioner Chang to be a very capable person, very informed and thoughtful. And those are both two important characteristics. I think he'll make a wonderful vice chair.
So Commissioner Chang has been a great addition to the commission. She brings energy and this kind of unquenchable thirst to understand new concepts. She asks a lot of the right questions to get to, a lot of the right positions. And I guess when I think of the vice chair position, I think that is it doesn't have to be, but it can and often is the sort of the training ground for the next chair. And I think that although there's no assurance that I'll be around to vote on something in April of 2024, I'd like to see Commissioner Chang fulfilling the duties of the vice chair this year and basically training up with the idea that she might be the chair in the following year. So I'm happy to have seconded that nomination.
And I'm also extremely happy and agree with everything that my colleague said about Commissioner Chang. She's a wonderful addition to this body and to the community. So are there any speakers? There's a hand up, I see.
Yes, Winter again.
Or one audience.
Okay, we'll go to the public. Ms. Dellenbach? Is your hand still up?
Yes, but I need to be unmuted.
Oh, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, I always like to be referred to as, Winter again. I did want to say something about Bryna, who I have never seen such a fast learner. There is a contrast between Commissioner Suma and Commissioner Chang in that Suma has been around on the Palo Alto, serving Palo Alto for decades. And Commissioner Chang has been much newer on the scene. And yet you seem to come in like a tornado and just kind of suck up knowledge and be able to then synthesize it and articulate it so well. And again, very economically. You never showboating, never drawing needless attention to yourself, just getting in there, coming in, doing the work, getting down to business, doing the homework, and I've been really impressed. And I just wanted to say that. And I'm just, again, very impressed by the four of you tonight. You have two people on board to lead this extremely important commission for our city that are just going to get down to business, not mess around, and move forward. And I appreciate all four of you, and I appreciate both the new chair and the vice chair very much. And congratulations to Commissioner Chang and to Commissioner Suma. So well done. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dellenbach. Do we have any other speakers?
No, that's it.
Okay, then we can proceed to the vote.
Chair Suma,
Yes?
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rekdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Excellent. So now, congratulations to Commissioner Chang. And thank you all, and thank you to the members of the public that spoke. And with that, we will go on to our next action item, which is item number 5, recommendation of a permanent ordinance amending Titles 18 and 21 to implement state housing legislation from the 2021 legislative session, et cetera. So do we have a report from staff?
Yes, our attorney, Albert Yang, will be presenting the PowerPoint, and he is going to be uploading that with any assistance needed.
I think I got it. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, is that showing up correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So this will be a short presentation. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend adoption of regular or permanent ordinances to replace the interim ordinances that the City Council adopted last year. These are largely focused on SB 9, but they address a couple of other state laws, including SB 478 that were adopted and went into effect January 1st, 2022. So just a quick review of SB 9. It requires ministerial approval of 2-unit housing development on single-family lots. And so this 2 units can be a duplex, they can be 2 single-family homes, they can be a single-family home and an ADU. SB 9 also requires ministerial approval of urban lot splits, and that is subdivision of a single-family lot into 2 without regard for our normal minimum lot size requirements. For the 2-unit development, approvals can only be based on objective standards, and we can only deny a project if there are specific adverse impacts on public health and safety, and those are very narrow circumstances. And there are limitations on how we can regulate with those objective standards. There are 4-foot side and rear setbacks that we have to allow. We can't require more than 1 parking space per unit, et cetera. SB 9 is available to all single-family zoned properties, except certain environmentally sensitive areas and listed historic properties and districts. In addition, SB 9, you cannot use SB 9 if you're going to be demolishing existing rental units. As for lot splits, there are several criteria. The lots that you end up with have to be roughly equal in size at most a 60% to 40% split of the original parcel. And each of the resulting parcels has to be at least 1,200 square feet in size. You also can't do successive SB9 lot splits. You can only do it once. And you also can't act in concert. You can't coordinate with your neighbor. You can't sell your neighboring property to a family member, for example, and then have them lot split with SB9. There's a requirement that if you are splitting a lot, you sign an affidavit saying that you're going to occupy a unit on one of the resulting lots, although that there are some enforcement difficulties with that. And finally, you can only use the properties for residential uses. As with the 2-unit development, we can apply a variety of objective standards, but we can't preclude construction of 2 units that are at least 800 square feet. And there are the same limitations on setbacks, no more than 1 parking space per unit, etc. So last year, I guess actually in December of 2021, the council adopted an urgency ordinance that went into effect right away. And then in January of 2022, the council adopted an interim ordinance that required 2 readings, but did not come to the PTC first. And in order to have a permanent ordinance, the PTC has to provide a recommendation, and that's what we're seeking now. Back in January and then later in April, the council also adopted objective standards for both 2-unit development and urban lot splits. And in general, that is where a lot of the actual detail is in terms of our regulation of this development. The interim ordinances themselves basically parrot state law. They say what you can do and what you can't do, but they don't express a lot of kind of local policy in terms of how we want this development to look. So what we're doing now is we're splitting out the ordinances from the objective standards because we are reaching the point, approximately a year has passed since the interim ordinances were adopted, and we don't want them to be sitting out there as interim ordinances for too long. And staff has already started outreach to stakeholders so that we can bring those standards, which are more detailed, to the ARB and PTC. So we're here for any questions.
Okay, thank you for that report. And I think what I'll do is ask my colleagues if they have any clarifying questions and do that. And then we'll go to the public and then come back for our discussion. So anybody have no light? I don't see any lights. Okay. Okay, then we will go to the public. As I said earlier, there's no one in chambers. I don't know if there's anyone out in the public that in Zoom land that would like to speak to this item.
Currently, there are no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, if we get one in a minute or so, we'll let them speak, but I guess since we have none, we will go straight back to the commission. So who would like to start us? Commissioner Chang?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few kind of educational questions for me, understanding SB9. I figured this is a good time to ask some of these questions of Mr. Yang. So if we look at packet page 73, for bicycle parking, which is referred to in the table, how is a bike space defined? I'm just curious. Like, is it just defined as a place where one can lock up a bicycle, or how do we Or does it just need to be drawn into a drawing, or how does that work?
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm just looking at packet page 73, noting that there are two columns. One says class 1 long-term, which is typically, put that inside of a locked enclosed structure. And then when it says spaces, typically that's a bike rack in parlance in the code for parking. So
Yeah. I guess I don't know if Sylvia is still with, oh, she's not, but I'll just note that bike parking isn't a requirement for SB9 or single family development, but it is a column in that table that's shown because that table includes our parking requirements for all types of development, including multifamily and commercial. And I believe we probably do define the different types of bike parking and provide diagrams for the dimensions that are required. But I don't have that off the top of my head.
That's fine. I recognize that this is not directly related, but because I saw it in the ordinance, I wanted to ask the question. And then on page 74, I just wanted to understand better C2 and sort of what's going on there, and what is it a renter protection issue or what? I mean, I know that this was just written as SB9, but if you could just explain to me what this is preventing.
Yeah.
From happening.
So this is basically saying that if someone has invoked the Ellis Act in the past 15 years on this property, then they cannot take advantage of SB9.
So the Ellis Act for the uneducated, could you explain that to me too?
Yes, sorry. The Ellis Act is a state law that guarantees a landlord's right to stop renting their property.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, this section of the code is for R1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so if somebody's been renting their house out and then they've decided to stop renting it out in the last 15 years, they would no longer be able to.
Only if they relied on the specific provisions of state law that allow them to stop offering their property for rent and evict their tenants with certain notices and now in Palo Alto, potentially relocation requirements. So
okay. Only if they had to activate to use the LLS law in order to evict their tenants. Otherwise, if it was a mutual agreement to just stop renting, then they could still take advantage of SB9.
Right.
Okay.
And there are notice requirements to the city if you're invoking the Ellis Act. So it's not something that, it's not something that we encounter often, I'll say.
Great. Thank you. That it just makes a lot more sense to me. Great. Thank you. And I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Anyone else? This Commissioner Rekdal?
Yeah, it's a few nitpicky questions too. On packet page 68, this isn't an addition, but I had the same thought as like, what's going on here? The bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfasts are allowed in RMD. Are they allowed elsewhere? This is the top of back page 68 where they talk about bed and breakfasts are limited no more than 4 units in the RMD district. For example, R1 is a bed and breakfast allowed there.
Amy, do you know the?
So this is not a change to the existing ordinance.
Yeah, if you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah, RMD is, 2 unit is not subject to SB9.
It does not appear that bed and breakfasts are permitted in the R1.
Okay.
Yeah, they are. They are not only in the RMD where there are 2 units.
Okay. And how about R2? Could you have one in there? It appears not because it just
No.
says in the RMD district.
No.
And so, okay. Let's see, then on packet page 72, when they talk about within 1 block of a car share vehicle means 600 feet of a parking space permanently reserved for use by car share vehicles. What does permanently mean in that?
Yeah. So this was one of the gifts of the state legislature to tell us that, something depends on whether you're within 1 block of a car share space, but not defining that in any way. So we did our best here. We defined 1 block as 600 feet, and then we tried to basically capture spaces for something like Zipcar, where there's a space that's set aside for a car share car, but not for free floating car share, where you have a car that could park kind of anywhere where parking is permitted.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So, I mean, there's no guarantee that the zip car is going to be there permanently, but the term permanent means not the floating one. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Packet page 82, there's something that confused me. The 2-family use. It was, maybe I was reading online and maybe the paging is a little different. I'll find that later. Page 70, packet page 78. When they talk about 30 days of, top of packet page 79, the rental of any dwelling unit on a lot created by the parcel shall be for a term longer than 30 consecutive days. That just means that it's not a short-term rental, but in Palo Alto, you have to offer a 1-year lease, right? And so this doesn't preclude the offering of 1-year lease, does it?
No, it's just saying you can't use it for short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you. And I'll look, while other questions are being answered, I'll look for the last question. Thank you.
Commissioner Heckman?
Thank you. So I want to just sort of, I've got a few comments and cleanup items. Some of which I think are pretty clear. Others I'm going to suggest, I just want to bring them to staff's attention and have staff look at them offline, because I don't think all of them will be easily just responded to on the fly. So just look at them and consider the point and decide whether something needs to be done. So I'll start on packet page 68. The new addition to table 1, what's been added is the footnote 4. And in footnote 4, there's the statement is construction of 2 units permitted in an RE zoned lot subject to the regulations in section 18.42.180, which is basically our new section. But I think you also may need a reference to 18.10.040, the development standards. And I think actually, which is, if you look at the table at the top of, that ends at the top page 69, you refer to both 0.040 and 180. So I'd like staff just to look at whether 0.040 should be in reference in footnote 4 to table 1. So that's the first one. Then when you go down to table 2, so we have our zoning, we have an R-1, an R-2, and an R-no-E. It's just RE, but those dashes crept in a few places here between the R and the E, and so I just want to point them out to staff. The first one is in the heading for table 2, where it says R-E, footnote 6 after that. So I think that dash goes away. Similarly, on packet page 69, the heading for table 3, R-E, I think the dash goes away. Let's see. Next, I'm on packet page 73 and 74. So this is our new section 16. It's our new section for these SB9 2-unit developments. And so and what I want to raise here, mostly for Mr. Yang to cogitate on, is whether the definition of unit we have in subpart B of 0.180 works here. Because, so if I've got a lot and I want to build a house and an ADU or a JADU, that doesn't implicate 0.180, because this is 0.180, I think is intended only to be for SB9 2-lot developments. But when I look at the definitions, item 3 is 2 dwelling units and item 4 is unit. So the unit in item 4 is the same unit, needs to be the same unit in item 3, 2 dwelling units. But the unit in item 4 refers to not only a primary dwelling unit, which I think in SB9 development contemplates really 2 primary dwelling units. But the definition 4 says, in addition to a primary dwelling unit, a unit can be an ADU or a JADU. So, and again, I think that that's not an SB9 development if I've got my 2 units are in a primary house and an ADU. So I would just ask staff to look at that as this moves toward council and see if some adjustment needs to be made. I do note that a lot of the language in here was, parroted directly from state law, where they were kind enough to, give full information. So if these are state law definitions, then, so be it, we'll live with it. But if not, then maybe we can clarify that so people don't submit SB9 applications when they just want to build a house and an ADU. Okay. I'll move on to packet page 75. Subpart E, development standards, sub 2. There's a parenthetical in the middle, except to the extent necessary to construct a unit of 800 square feet. So, of course, SB9 requires the city's rules to accommodate construction of these SB9 units up to 800 square feet. But here, if I wanted a 750 square feet, or less. So you're not requiring people to build exactly 800 square feet. And I think if we add or less, that's consistent with the intent of the city. Same page going down to item 6. And for this one, I need to give a little context. So there are 2 SB9 ordinances. We're dealing with only one of them tonight. And that is what is described in the staff report as the one that has the basic framework. So this is really getting kind of the bones of SB9 into our local law. And then staff's going to come back to us with the thing that puts the meat on the bones. And so with that context, when I look at section 6, subpart 6, development standards, the last clause that where you have an urban lot split and you're going to have 3 or more detached units on the 2 lots, any new units shall not exceed 800 square feet. So I don't believe that's part of the bones of SB9. And I might be wrong. I think what SB9 says is that the cities have to accommodate at least 800 square feet without putting a cap. And so if I'm correct, then I would like to see that removed from this ordinance, which is only setting forth the basic framework consistent with SB9, and put into the next ordinance with the meat for our consideration as part of the sort of the bigger picture of what we're doing with the detail of SB9. And that's something that some of my fellow commissioners, I mean, most of the stuff I'm commenting on, I realize is very dry, but that is something that maybe some of my fellow commissioners want to weigh in on tonight. All right, so I will move on. Packet page 76. And no one's going to care about this except for me and Mr. Yang. Effective dates. So we've created these SB9 rules, and this tells us how long they last. And so we're basically keeping it until this government code section, which is the codification of SB9, is repealed or superseded, or its requirements for ministerial approval of no more than 2 units on a single family zone lot are materially amended, whether by legislation or initiative, at which time this section shall become null and void. So essentially, what I think we're trying to say here is if SB9 goes away, we only did this for SB9. If SB9 goes away, this goes away too. The concern I have is that what's written here isn't just if SB9 goes away, which is repealed. If it's suspended, our ordinance goes away. If it's materially amended, and we don't know what that means, our ordinance goes away. And I don't think that's really what we want. I think if the state law is, it says superseded. I mean, I think we want to track whatever happens, and I don't think this does that. And so we're at risk that there will be a material amendment to SB9, this statute, and our ordinance goes away, and we don't want it to. So I would suggest staff just look at that and think a little bit more about whether there's a better way to tether it to what happens with the state law, so that we are more flexible and don't end up with no ordinance, which, sometimes in this atmosphere, when you have no ordinance, you have to allow whatever is applied for to be developed. So, and I think we want to avoid that. All right, I'll move on. I just got a couple more. Packet page 77, in the middle of the page, right under the heading for the section on applicability, R-E. Packet page 78. The section in the middle of the page, the general requirements, subpart D, newly created lot line shall not render existing structure non-compliant in any respect, nor increase the degree of non-compliance with an existing non-compliant structure. So the question I flagged here is, well, what about setbacks? Are we intending that the newly created lot shall not render an existing structure non-compliant in any respect, including setbacks? I think if we are, I think it's important to flag that, because that's frankly the non-compliance issue that most often comes up when you see people trying to do a lot line adjustment or a lot split. So I would suggest staff think about addressing setbacks, whether it's included or not included in this non-compliance concept here. At the bottom of packet page 78, the requirement, these are requirements for an urban lot split. Item 5, the resulting lots will be used for residential uses only. So I guess my question on that is, does that preclude what are referred to in most codes? I actually didn't look at ours to see if we use the same terminology. Home occupations, which is, a small home business. It's a commercial use of your home, which is allowed generally. But I wanted to know if this is intended to exclude home occupations, or maybe is the interpretation that home occupation is considered a residential use, and so it's okay. So that one I'm kind of curious about, if you have an idea on that tonight, Mr. Yang.
Okay, yeah. So on that last issue, it is not intended to preclude home occupation because we do have pretty clear limitations on the amount of space that can be used for home occupation. So we think that's consistent with residential use, but that is a good note to potentially clarify in here.
Okay, thanks. Over on packet page 79, the effective dates provision toward the bottom of the page same issue I brought up before, repealed, superseded, materially amended. So that's just, it's a second place where it pops up. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rectal, did you have?
Yeah, I had two more comments. Packet page 84 at the very top under B, where it says the accessory dwelling unit is constructed on a single family zoned lot containing a two-family use. What does that mean? Wouldn't every ADU be a two-family use?
No, so we do define two-family use in our code, and I believe that's likely what this is referring to. Just give me a second to get the context here. Yeah, so I think this is in reference to our code definition of two-family use, which I can pull up, but I believe it's also meant to be referencing an ADU that's built in addition to an existing two-family use. So it may be helpful to insert the word existing there.
And what is the definition of two-family use?
I found it and could share my screen if that helps.
Yes.
Or I can just read it. Definition 141, two-family use means the use of a site for two dwelling units, which may be within the same building or separate buildings. So that's in chapter 1804.
So I think we can clarify this section to make clear that we're talking about existing two-family uses and perhaps also two-family uses that are created through SB 9.
Commissioner Heckman? Oh, are you done?
No,
Sorry.
I'm still. So this is saying that if you have an accessory dwelling unit, I guess, what kind of situation would you have that would have a two-family use?
Yeah, so so I guess first of all, this section is in response to council direction that we received in December 2021 that they would like development that comes through SB 9 to be subject to our BMR requirements. So normally ADUs are exempt from the BMR program. You don't have to pay in lieu fees. You don't have to do anything like that. But the council direction was if someone is going to be taking advantage of SB 9, we want to apply our existing BMR program. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here is, although 1 and 2 unit development is normally excluded from the BMR program, we're trying to include it when it's accomplished through SB 9. And so one thing you could do with SB 9 is create 2 units. You could create a duplex on your single family lot. And then you could come back to the city and say, I'd like to build an ADU on this lot. That's not something that would normally be allowed without SB 9, but in the SB 9 world, it's something that we have to permit. So in that case, we would be saying both that the initial SB 9 2-unit duplex would be subject to our BMR program that gets covered by sub A. And then if you came back for the ADU, that would be covered by sub B. You would also have to be subject to the BMR program.
Okay, so SB9 isn't just a lot split. It also allows duplexes?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And then one last question on packet page 77. On section A there, special flood hazard areas, because we can't do the splits on special flood hazard areas. Is that different than a flood zone? What is the definition of a special flood hazard area?
I'll have to say I'm not sure, and our Public Works Department would be better able to answer that question.
Okay. So this is just boilerplate that came from the state?
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Well, can I just chime in there? Because I had the same question and I actually went to go look at the piece of code, the California government code that it references. So those subdivisions mention, like they define the flood zone as a 100-year flood. But maybe are you asking, is this outside of what's defined in the government code?
I'm just curious, a big chunk of Palo Alto's flood area. And does this mean that, for example, if you're over on
But with respect to government code section 65913.4 and the reference subdivisions there, one of those subdivisions specifically talks about a 1% chance of flood, meaning a 100-year flood. And so then if that's what it says, Mr. Yang, is that what it means, that anybody in a 100-year flood zone can't use SB9 can't use SB9?
That appears to be correct, but I would have to look into it a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hackman,
Ghost light.
Ghost Light. Okay. Most of my questions were answered, but I did have one question on packet page 75, E3. If the application of any development standard or design standard would necessarily require that clause, does that mean that we could end up not even having 4-foot setbacks in the sides and rear?
That's right. And one of the projects that we anticipate is sort of having a ranked list of which of our regulations gets relaxed first. So right now, one of the things we require for SB9 projects is that if you're building 2 stories, that the second story have a further step back, even than 4 feet. Perhaps we'd relax that before we let the first story encroach within that 4-foot setback. But that's not something that we've completed yet. So at this point, it would be up to the applicant what they want to propose to reach that 800 square feet.
Okay, it just seems incredibly undesirable and unworkable not to have even that minimal setback. I mean, where do you put your garbage cans? How do you walk around your building? How do you maintain fences? So I guess just we should be thinking about keeping these properties safe and usable also as we make those decisions. And I believe all my other questions were asked by my colleagues. So do we have a second round? Anybody? Oh, Commissioner Chang, go ahead.
Oh, I think Mr. Yang was going to say something, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to note, I refreshed my memory about the flood zone issue. So if you are within the 100-year flood area, it's not a complete bar against using SB9. It's just that you have to go through certain processes to show that your application will still be safe.
Okay. What are those processes?
I think it's similar to how we would deal with single family development in the flood zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same rules. Got it. I did have a follow-on question with respect to Chair Suma's question. So the publishing of the order in which objective standards shall be waived, will that come before us at the same time as the objective standards themselves? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay, great. And do we have a guess as to when that might be coming to us? Or is there a timeline that staff has?
We're looking at visiting with the ARB coming up in March. And I believe returning to the commission maybe, later in March or depending on our agendas or early April.
Okay, good. So it'll be soon at least. I think it was a little terrifying to hear that. All right. And then I wanted to follow up on I wanted to thank Commissioner Heckman for raising all these very detailed and some of them very critical potential issues. And he had mentioned that some of them might require further discussion. So I think this would be the time for us to discuss, right? Because if a change needs to be made in the ordinance before it goes to council, we should discuss them. So one of those was, I think packet page 75, E6, where Commissioner Heckman suggested that the last clause be moved into the objective standards. I think, was that right?
Yeah, actually, I mean, the way it works is you would just strike 6
Right.
from this provision and move it to the ordinance we're going to be considering in the future.
Well, so in response to his suggestion, I think that does make sense because if I understand correctly, Mr. Yang, the intent is that we separate the objective standards so that they can be changed more easily, kind of through a different process than changing this ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So it seems to me that something that isn't required in this piece of legislation, we should take out then. So I concur with Commissioner Heckman. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak on that, just so we can get a resolution for staff.
I would agree with that. It makes sense to me. And I guess we can, when we get a motion, we could put that in the motion. Commissioner Rectal?
Would this necessarily have to be taken out now, or would we pass it as is? And then when we pass the objective standards, then you would remove this from this section? What's a cleaner way of doing that?
So, if the suggestion I'm making is that we take it out of this because when that other ordinance comes back to us, they won't be bringing this ordinance with it. So what we're trying to do is collect in that other ordinance all of the objective standards, and I consider this, one of them that's not part of SB 9. It's really the ordinance coming to us later is really our municipal response to SB 9, and how to exert some control over what's being foisted upon us. And I believe this discussion about this belongs in that dialogue. So
I can make a suggestion, which is, first, just to clarify, the objective standards won't be coming in the form of an ordinance. They'll just be sort of a separate document that gets adopted by the council. But one thing we could do is when we take this ordinance to the council, we could also include an update to the standards, even though they'll be coming back to the PTC. But we could, at the same time the council adopts this ordinance, update the standards to move this piece into there. And then there would be no gap in the applicability of that requirement unless the PTC and the council later decide they want to change it.
Is that satisfactory?
That works for me. I think that solves your issue, Commissioner.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that answer. Did you have more?
No, whenever everybody's ready, I'm willing to try a motion, but I don't think we're
Commissioner
quite there.
Rectal? Do you,
I'm done. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Chang?
Okay, so I have one more item, and I don't know if I didn't do a good job taking notes on this one, but it seemed that we might have to have a little bit of discussion on it as well. So middle section, I think it was D, right, where we were talking about setbacks. Well, see, I think Commissioner Heckman remembers better than I do. So maybe you can bring up whatever it is that I think that we need to discuss, but can't remember.
Sure, if I may share. So the issue I was trying to bring a little more clarity to subpart D. These are the general requirements that are going to apply when an urban lot split is done. And the way D describes it, because you can do an urban lot split, with a structure already there, right? I've got a house on my property, I can still split it. And so what D says is when I do this split, I'm not going to make existing structures non-compliant, nor increase the degree of non-compliance in an existing non-compliant structure. So what I've asked the question, is staff intending this to apply to setbacks? Because in my experience, that's the most frequent place we find non-compliance, older structures on parcels under older rules. And so if staff's intention is that setbacks are to be included, then I would include it in the parenthetical, because it's important and you're more likely to see it than these things. And the public will want to know how setbacks are handled. And if it was staff's intention that it's not one of the things that should be here, then it should say, excluding setbacks. And so I wasn't really imposing any judgment on which way it goes. I was really wanting to understand from staff what their intention was, and let's make that clear in subpart D.
Yeah. So I believe the intention was to include setbacks, and we can include it in that list of examples.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I think that's actually what's really important, is that regardless of what staff's intention was, as a commissioner, my direction would have been to, yes, please include setbacks if we're allowed to. And then I would assume that we all should chime in on what our direction would be with respect to that.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, I'm used to seeing in our code is it'll say sometimes including, but not limited to. So
Yeah.
this is kind of with the EG as the examples. It's not a complete set, but as you say, setbacks is going to be one of the most frequent.
Yeah.
So it'll be glaringly.
I would agree that setbacks should be explicitly added. Commissioner Rectal, did you want to opine on that?
Yeah, on packet page 97, we have these three topologies, and the middle one in particular, where you have a flagpole lot that has to be 10 feet. Are we required to have the setbacks? I'm looking at that vertical line between lots A and B in the middle picture. And is the structure on lot A required to have full setbacks with that border? Like if there was a driveway there, would you have to have full setbacks with that border, just like it would be a regular lot line?
Well, you would need to have the 4-foot side setback that SB 9 allows.
Okay. And a lot of the flag lots, I guess, is old construction, is where you have just enough room for the driveway between the fence and the existing house to get the flag lot access. But okay, so then I'm happy with that then.
Can I, while we're on packet page 97, I'm glad you mentioned it because I actually had seen something here that I neglected to bring up. The diagram that Keith, Commissioner Rechtel is talking about is the middle and flag lot, which refers in the language directly below it to a flagpole of at least 10 feet. But if you look just below that to the three explanations, item 2 refers to a 15-foot flagpole. So that was just everything else appears to be 10. And so I was suspecting that the 15 was intended to be 10. But when I look at the diagram of 2 versus 3, the flagpole does look wider than the easement. So maybe it's supposed to be 15. Staff, which is it?
Yeah, well, we'll have to go back to our notes.
Okay.
on
All right.
this.
So just whatever it is, make it consistent.
Yeah.
And for, now I look in the right-hand picture, the flag lot with the easement. Where would the setback be based on? Would it be based on this easement boundary or based on the lot boundary?
Are you asking about the side, interior side setback in those cases?
Yeah, the right-hand side, if you were to build a house on lot A,
Yeah, we would take it from that easement line.
from the easement line would be the setback. Okay.
Anything else, commissioners? Or are we ready to make a motion?
All right, I will try.
All right.
I will move the staff recommendation to recommend this ordinance to the city council with the following modifications. The references to R-E be corrected. In section 18.42.180E, the language or less be added to subpart 2, subpart 6 be deleted, and subpart 7 and 8 renumbered. In section 21.10040 subpart D, add the word setbacks within the parenthetical, and that staff consider the commission's comments made regarding the particular items on packet pages 68, 74, 76, 78, and 79, which I raised, packet page 84, which Commissioner Rechtel raised, and then the correction on packet page 97. And that staff consider those comments and make whatever revisions to those provisions staff feels are appropriate and warranted before taking the ordinance to council.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't really have anything to add.
Would you like to speak to your second?
No, but I do have a question because we are going fast. So did you capture for back page 75, the item where E sub 6, where we're going to strike?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't reference packet page 75 for both of the changes on 75. I just referenced the ordinance, the section of the ordinance.
Okay.
I did.
Any other comments? Then we can proceed with the vote.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rechtel. Motion carries 4-0.
Excellent. Thank you for that very detailed motion. I think we can move on to minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes, I believe, to recommend. The first one is December 14th, draft of last year, draft summary and verbatim meeting minutes.
I'll move approval as revised.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we can go ahead and take a vote.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And then our next set of minutes is November 30th of last year. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval as revised.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so we can conduct the vote, please.
Vice Chair Chang.
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And finally, November 16th of last year, we have draft summary meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval as revised.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So we can conduct the vote, please.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And I guess now if we have any commissioner comments or reports, we can go ahead and take them. I don't see any lights. Well, then I guess we are ready to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.